Vero Beach Recreation Commission meeting for Tuesday, January 8th. Our regular meeting is hereby called to order.
Mr. McMillan, Mr. Holton,
Here.
Mrs. Malone,
Here.
Mrs. Burdick,
Here.
Ms. Jones, Ms. Donetto,
Present.
and Chairman Yem.
Here.
This is really loud. Yeah.
He'll hear it, and hopefully we will adjust it. Approval of minutes for November 13th, 2018. Has everybody had a chance to review them? Any discussion? Yeah, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Assuming all in favor for approval. Opposed, there's nobody. Public comment? Do you have anything to say? Chance. You can say whatever you want, there's nobody out here. All right, new business, review of annual report. One way or the other, everybody has gotten a copy of it, and hopefully you've had a chance to review it. Questions, suggestions, additions, deletions? Good collection of pictures again.
Thank you to the Recreation Department.
Well, you do a good job of pulling it together.
I don't have any questions.
Well, looking for a motion.
Well, I make a motion that we accept this report as it's written and pass it along to City Council.
A second.
Okay, I think we can do this by voice vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, seeing as none. You got that one done pretty quick, Rita. And I just covered up the agenda. All right, old business. Actually, the old business, which will follow this meeting, is the public workshop. And while we're waiting for Patty, I'll give you an idea of how I expect to conduct that workshop. Since it's a public workshop, I think we should try and keep, the commission comments to a minimum, let the public speak. And then after they have spoken, then we can put, our comments into record. And that way we're not really biasing the public, on our position, by our positions. In the order of people speaking, I've asked Amalie to speak first, since she is one of the original members of the Recreation Commission and the establishment of Parks and Recreation program here. So, let's start with history. And then Rob, if you'll follow and just bring everything up to date.
Okay.
You're shaking your head.
Okay.
Just a general overview,
Okay.
on what we're going to build on. What's the purpose of this thing?
Okay.
Is my idea behind it.
Okay.
Everybody else can join in on what, they want to hear. And then after that, basically, we proceed to public comment. And there are going to be a few people in here like Brian Hetty,
Yay.
which is good.
I hope somebody from city council shows up.
They will. I've been told they will. So, any other ideas, discussions? I think it's trying to keep this thing narrow also, because I'm trying to keep it on track, that the discussion is about parks and recreation, not getting into Marine Commission issues, not getting into lagoon issues. Just trying to concentrate on parks and recreation, is my thinking. So chime in if you have other ideas. I'm just telling you what my thoughts are.
Is there any way you can limit time?
Yes, but, within reason, I would say, 3 to 5 minutes.
And-
If it gets outside of that, then I'll just ask that people need to take into consideration other people to follow them. I'm not going to be, we don't want somebody up here for 20 minutes.
Right, that's what and what about, did they come up one time?
No, because I think you go through it one time first.
And then they can
If they
come
have
back?
follow-up,
Okay.
come back and do that, because some people will spark, ideas to somebody who has spoken,
Okay.
and they want to come back and do it. It's a public workshop, so it's just,
Open discussion.
correct.
So if we're staying strictly to Parks and Rec, we're not going to be discussing the letter from this guy about the marina?
Well, as far as that letter goes, my understanding is Tony Young's going to be here. He's the one that wanted it entered into the record.
Okay.
So I'll ask him if he'll read it into the record. I mean, that's public comment, he can do that. But it's not any position, I don't think, that we as a Recreation Commission want to get involved in.
I don't think so either. Okay.
Okay, so we're all on the same line so far. There is one thing, I also would like to know who the people speaking, whether or not they're city residents. Because as you know, we get a turnout of a lot of people outside of the city who, it's nice to hear their comments, but it's really the city residents by their vote that control, the development of the city, theoretically. So, and you don't have any trouble with that, Stephanie. We've gone through this sometime about people identifying residents, et cetera, like that.
Well, I'm sure Patty can tell you that it's not just city residents that use the parks. I understand what you're saying as far as city residents are those that vote the electorate in, but it is many county residents that use the recreation facilities and pay the fee associated therewith.
That's a good point.
So I would advise you to keep it open to the public.
No, it is open to the public.
And
I just want to identify, because ultimately, whose money are you spending? You charge fees, yes, indirectly, county residents or whoever the participants are.
But as a business owner in the city, I pay city taxes, although I live in the county.
Well, same with me. Actually, I still have a home here as well. Don't live
But,
here.
as we've run our surveys and beaches and use of facilities and things like that, we know most of the facilities are used, the predominance is by people who don't live in the city. It's like, 60-40, something like that, right, Rob?
When it comes to activities, it runs anywhere from 60 to 80%
County.
Yeah.
non-resident versus resident.
Yeah. So we want them to speak. Yes, Stephanie.
And then when it comes to tourism, you can add on even more, the changes even more.
But
Well, the tourists pay through tourist tax if they stay in a hotel.
And if they do that, money will then go to the tourist tax, which will go into the county.
right now.
There's no winning.
Well, one thing where you want to know if you can identify city residents is if you are talking about changes in the use of the parks, pulling, some of the parks out of the charter, things like that. City residents control that, not people living outside the city. So that's kind of, gives you the gist of where that's going to come from. That's why I asked the question. Okay, just so you know where it's not, well, it is discriminating in one way, but there's a method to the madness. Because how is the future going to be controlled, I think is what it gets down to. Does that give you any ideas, Brian? You're big on this. Am I inviting to get my head cut off? No, go ahead.
I get accused of cutting people's heads off because they say things they don't like, but I think that the things that I do say at this public podium, there's quite a few residents that agree with a lot of what I have to say, and I think that you can find residents that would agree 100% of the things that I say, you can find residents that would agree with. And I'm not now or any time ever trying to chop anyone's head off, but I would agree that all speakers, city or county, should speak, and we should listen to them. And I'm sure that there's plenty of county residents that have some good ideas. The county residents, however, that always want to sell our public parklands to benefit one of their friends, I think that you have an obligation to listen to their BS, but I think that one of the things that draws people to a city is the green space, is the parks. And I can tell you that I've watched this gentleman sitting there in front of you for a lot of years, and he'll confirm that. And I've seen him work miracles with his hands tied behind his back, because councils, city councils, have refused to put the amount of money into parks that are necessary to keep our parks in tip-top shape. I can tell you that the parks are not as nice or as well kept as they were 25 years ago. And I can tell you that from personal experience. And if you don't think that that's accurate, go over to Young Park and take a look at the roofs on the pavilions in Young Park. If you don't think that there's a problem with the amount of money that we give to Rob, and we give to Monty too, to some extent, to keep our parks. If you don't think there's a problem, take a look. Go over to the Humiston and look at that beach restroom facility on the outside. Look at the decay. It's terrible. It really is. It's terrible, and it's because you've taken and you've tied Rob's hands and other city employees. And then I listen to people come to this podium who attack city employees as being overpaid, or recently that a charter officer should be fired, and when the charter officer really didn't do anything wrong, at least the charter officer that was being attacked. And as a recreation commission, if I could give you any advice at all, if you care to listen to any of my advice at all, then the number one thing that I would say is stop making city employees work with their hands tied behind their back. And remember that city employees need to live here too. They need to eat, they need to provide transportation, they need all of the things that we all need. And trying to do it on the cheap in terms of city employees' salaries is not at all the way to go. And then one last thing, we have a pile of money right at the moment from the sale of the electric utility. And we have a time now, we have a window of opportunity to send a message to City Council, you as commissioners, and the council often says, well, what does the whatever commission, what's the Marine Commission say, what's the Recreation Commission say about that? Here's something that you could recommend to the City Council to help each and every single one of the city residents who you represent, and that is take the money that we've received, while we still have it, before some council piddles it away on nonsense, and pay off all of the loans on our parks. What's it, $6 million out at Dodgertown? And there's a complaint that echoes constantly, oh, that cost us $300,000 a year. Well, it wouldn't cost us $300,000 a year if we took the money that we earned, the city residents that paid extra money for electric utility and built something that was worth $185 million, give us back some of the money you sold our utility for, and give it back by paying off the debt on the marina, by paying off the debt on the old golf course, and by giving Rob and others responsible enough money to go out and to bring our parks back to A1 shape. And I haven't been down Little Flower, I haven't been down that particular path in a couple of months, but the last time I was down, damn, that pavilion was you know, it was wrecked in 2016 hurricanes? Was it 16, 17? 2017 hurricane.
Yeah.
And, you know, and Rob can't make that park look wonderful unless you give Rob and Monty enough money to take care of it. So that's my message. I probably went over the 3-minute limit or the 5-minute limit, and you know, the limits on citizens should be if they get up here and they start reading the telephone book, if they get up here and they start talking about nothing. But I've heard well-meaning citizens who have done incredible work to bring something before the council, city council, or commissions, and they're shut off in 3 minutes when the consultant that we spent a few $100,000 on is given 30, 40, 50 minutes, and the citizen makes more sense.
Yeah, but you know that sometimes it is difficult to differentiate somebody that's presenting something worthwhile versus somebody that's just running on.
I've served on 3 different commissions in the city.
Yeah.
I've served as city council member. And I can tell you that when I was on, one of the things that I insisted on, and pretty well got my way, is that citizens aren't given limitations, that we'll listen to them as long as it takes, because that's what we volunteered to do, or that's what we're paid to do. And I can also tell you that 9 times out of 10, if you let a citizen go on long enough, particularly a citizen who has totally wacko ideas, if you let them go on long enough, then the public will realize that they're a wackadoo at the public podium.
But some people we don't need to go on because we know before they start.
Well, I think that city councils, I think that commissions, I think newspapers, I think the media has turned people into total nutcases that aren't nutcases.
Yeah.
That bring valuable information to the
No, I can remember the litany of people that have been here. See, I've been on this commission, over 20-something years. So I've obviously observed, many instances of participation. And there's value in everybody, I take that position, but it's how do you get that value out of the people?
And I would agree with you that sometimes it's very difficult to get something out of people because they aren't very good at articulating an idea or compressing their ideas into short periods of time. I understand that, but I also understand, and I experienced personally, that I insisted that citizens have a right to go on as long as they want. And that, in reality, Tom White was elected mayor, and he says, Brian, he says, I'm going to start something new here. He says, and it's really for you. And I say, hey, what's that, Tom? He says, no time limits. How's that? This is perfect. I've been fighting for that for a long time. It's perfect. 3 months later, Tom saw me out at Panera's or someplace for coffee, and he says, Brian, you got a minute? Sure, Tom. What do you need? He says, I've been clocking and keeping track of how long you speak at every meeting. I said, yeah. He says, do you know how long you speak? I said, I can give you a pretty good idea. He says, well, since I've dropped the time limits. I said, yeah, I know. I know what you mean. He says, well, how long do you think? Because I've timed it, Brian. I know the answer. I said, yeah, okay. I says, 2 minutes, 30 seconds. And he looked at me, how do you know that? I said, because I understand the public's attention span. I said, I never went over 3 minutes for the sake of going over 3 minutes. I went over 3 minutes for a couple of reasons, because I had more than 3 minutes of things to say, and I went over 3 minutes to demonstrate, to show the lack of concern, the unwillingness of elected officials or appointed officials to listen to the people that they're supposed to represent, and you can't represent us if you don't listen to us. Anyway, my major thing, and you, council, commission, you have an incredible opportunity right now, and there's a window there that I would plead that you not let it close, and that is a window to give to Rob and to Monty the necessary funds and to the finance department, the necessary funds to pay off the debt on any of our parks.
You need to present that in the public workshop that goes to council, because we have no control, as you know, on budget.
You have absolute control over things that you recommend to City Council.
Correct.
And that is something that you could recommend to City Council.
If they want to listen to us. If they want to listen to us.
Well, if they want to listen to you or not, we can see what happens there. But if you give them that recommendation, then you at least have put it out there, and then they can go on the record as denying it or not wanting it or whatever the case may be.
I think we'll get a lot of that hopefully out in this workshop.
I think so. Who called for the special call? You did. And why, and I don't care the mechanics of which way, I'm just curious, but why a separate meeting that has to be noticed, that costs extra money, why not incorporate it into this meeting and put it on the agenda? And it was saved.
When we set it up, we weren't planning on having this meeting. We were just going to do the workshop. And then we didn't have a regular commission meeting in December. So I just doubled both meetings today, to be more effective for this group.
Might get a larger group, too, at a later hour.
Yeah, I hope there's more than...
Well, it's at 6 o'clock, so we've got plenty of time.
Right. I hope that there is a group, and I certainly hope that they do come up and give their opinion, and I certainly hope that there's enough citizens that do come to the 6 o'clock workshop that care enough about this community and understand that one of the things that makes this community, or any community, is the green space and the public lands and the parks that we have, and not trying to constantly sell off everything from the cemetery to, just...
Well, this is the opportunity for people to express it.
Well,
all right, thank you. Rob, do you know how many acres are in this city?
Park acres or acres?
Acres of all city property?
Yes.
43 for the county and city.
Oh, no.
All, no, not even close.
There are thousands of acres.
There's thousands of acres. Oh, yeah. I would say 1,000 to 2,000 acres.
Well, what is it? It's 10 by 20 miles, roughly, rectangle.
Let me know that, actually. Hold on a second.
Probably Googleable.
City go from.
So that's one question I have for you. The second question is,
Yeah, I want to know.
what is the average amount, which is what Brian was referring to, is spent on per capita of city residents for recreation purposes?
The city is 13.34 square miles.
That's right.
Well, he asked acres.
How many
Okay.
acres?
I don't know how to do that.
Calculator out.
On to the conversion part of the website.
Well, we've got some time, so that's why I thought I'd put it out there.
With 2 square miles of water frontage.
Brian's got an answer.
No, but if you got a calculator, an acre is 208 square, and this is how many square miles are we?
13.
13, so it's easy to do the math.
What was the other question you had, Dick?
How much money per capita is spent on recreation?
Budget-wise.
Well, you have 15,800 city residents.
8,500 acres.
8,500?
Yeah, that doesn't seem right, does it?
No, it doesn't.
Nah, we got
That's what
more
I
than
had
that.
too, and it just didn't seem right.
But it's 13.34 square miles equals 8,500. 8,537.6. It's area squared.
Yeah.
It feels wrong, but
Yeah.
8,000 is a lot of acres.
The airport has to be.
Depends which cowboy you're talking to. You can go down to Adams Ranch, they got over, what, 30, 45,000 acres.
Yeah.
One square mile, 640 acres.
Barren Island is
So that's right.
1,650.
Yep, just over 8,500.
So the next question, Robbie, how many acres are allocated toward recreation purposes? Parks?
Well, we have Parks with Facilities is, this is an old 2006 report, was 206.15. And then open space, with open space, it was 212.94 acres.
So combined would be
I've got to be
218.
looking at this, yeah, so,
Oh, excuse me, before 18.
All right.
Yeah. I actually saw online that we had like 500 acres.
of parkland?
Yeah.
I remember being that high, but
I'm just saying what it said online. I don't believe
Yeah.
everything I see online, but
You know, it depends on what they're counting, you know, if they're counting beach.
so where I'm going with this,
they said 212.94 acres of recreation open space oriented land.
So 2.5% of the overall acreage.
Yes.
Is the land across the cemetery recreation?
No.
Where the Kaufman residence is behind Charles Park, is that?
Charles Park, there's a 4-acre piece there in addition to the other piece.
so we say of that, let's just say 450 acres that you said, You've got roughly 200 acres of green space.
Open space, 212.
Which is a little over 1% then of the overall parkland. Another 2.5.
Round it off.
All right, I'll give you some real percentages after the public meeting. I mean, at the end of the public meeting. As I said, I don't really want to influence what people think, but we are significantly on the low end, almost to the worst side of park.
Are you talking about in comparison to other cities?
Yes,
Based off of where's that data from?
it's on the internet. So there's a land trust thing. I copied it. It's big cities, the number one rated city in the country, and it's a big city, is Minneapolis. And their percentage of parkland to the overall is 20%. All right, and the worst cities are down to the 1 to 1.5%.
Is that off of the Land Trust website?
I don't know, but I've got it. It's in my stack here somewhere. It's just the percentage. As you can see, it's significant.
Well,
And then if you want to start selling your existing land,
I'd like to see those stats, so if you can, because I can't see. Just so I can look at it myself to see where, because I'm not sure what you're getting at, so I can comprehend what, this conversation, we're sitting here crunching numbers about percentages of value of land over the amount of land we have available as compared to a national average. I mean, if that's important, if that's important.
I'm not talking about value of land, I'm talking about percentage of land.
Right, but valuable land, i.e. for recreation. The value of it is that it's recreation land as compared to the average per acre. Is there a number, is there an organization that says, the average American city, 2% of every acre is used for recreation? Or is that number more like 8%?
No, it's percentage of land mass in a city boundary is what you're talking about.
Right, where's that come from? Who gathers that data?
It's online.
With all due respect, Mr. Young, the internet is gigantic.
Yes.
Probably the NRPA.
Right. National Recreation Parks Association, but
we can't access that because we're not members.
Well, no, you can. The Florida statewide comprehensive outdoor recreation plan is called the SCORP.
Okay.
What Dick's talking about is a little bit different than what they present, but what they present is they give you a general idea of what you should have in your cities for populations of 15,000 or less.
Just based off of a national standard.
Correct. And it's actually Florida. It's based on Florida, and it actually gives you statistically how you're doing within the area and within the state of Florida. So, for instance, and this is old, but let you know, like a baseball facility, existing number, you should have one field for every 5,000 people. Okay, one field. Basketball, you should have one for every 2,000 people. Boat ramps, it tells you, how many you should have. And we started doing this when we started looking at facilities-wise, we were doing pretty well. And then recreation park needs, it tells you how many small parks you should have, small playground areas to large playground areas. And when we did all that in the Florida Outdoor Recreation, the SCORP will actually help you out with all of that.
Okay. Can I see that briefly?
Sure. I can let you guys take a look and just let you see generally what it looks like. Sure. This is old, but yeah. at the time.
Well,
Indoor, outdoor?
It's called SCORP. It's called the Statewide Comprehensive Outdoor Recreation Plan. It's SCORP, but it's Florida's SCORP. I'll let you guys kind of take a look at this. This is something that, I'll let you guys take it down and pass it around. This is old, but that will give you a general idea of how we do with everybody.
when was he said there was one consultant plan done?
1992 was the last
That's what I
time
thought
you
you
actually
said.
had a plan put together by a bunch of consultants.
It said that was narrow in scope.
That was focused on recreation events programming. I don't think it really went into parks per se. I don't remember if it went into parks. I think it was more about our recreation. And we were with the county at the time, so it was kind of a combination of everything. It was recreation, not parks.
But it was countywide, not city.
Right.
Per se.
According to this, when I look at some of this information, neighborhood and community parks with special facilities, and this is old, 207.3, open space 7.43, schools inside the city limits were 127 acres, even though schools really, you can't even access their areas anymore. The Indian River County Ball Field Complex was 11.78, which is no longer. So the total was like 350 acres, but at the time. So roughly, you got to figure roughly 210 to 220 acres of land was your neighborhood and community parks with special facilities.
Well, the purpose behind this whole discussion is going toward what should the master plan include. You know, it's how many acres should we have? We're talking about green space before.
On the right side, you'll see too, Brooke, as you're kind of looking, you'll see how we did when we were one every 2,000.
Yeah, I mean, short of some of the boat access and actual water access, which is kind of mind-blowing. You'd think we'd have plenty of that. It says you're on par.
Right.
Is that I'm going to ask a really dumb question. This says par course without an E.
Right. Parcours is it's like a French term, and it's the exercise.
It is what I think it is.
Parcours are the ones that are in
jumping
Charles
and
Park. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so climbing
Charles and Riverside Park along that trail, the walking trail there.
Yep.
Those
Got
are
it.
Parcours.
Fitness trails.
Fitness trail.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just for your info, for comparison, Anchorage, Alaska has over 1 million acres of parkland. Jacksonville has 500,000 in parkland. Miami is 25,000 acres in parkland. And
So I think you found the website that I was...
Pardon?
I think you found the website that I was referring to.
Well, the interesting thing, because when I was on council or on commission, I would get this from a certain group always wanted to come back and what's the average and how do we compare, and they'd compare Vero Beach to another city, but they'd compare Vero Beach to a city that didn't have the waterfront, didn't have the beachfront, didn't have the airport, didn't have, I mean, the list gets long. And I think that a more relevant question is not how we compare in terms of number of acres to another city, but how do we perform for the citizens that we have here? How do we perform for the community and what the community wants? And I can tell you that this very vocal member of the community doesn't want you to sell any more of our parks, doesn't want any more of our parkland disappearing. And, you know, I can't imagine a scenario where I would advocate for cutting back on our parks. I think that as a citizen, what I'd much rather have you do is to provide for the parks in our community, the ones that we have. And if that means we have more than anybody else, so be it. If we have less than Jacksonville on a per capita, so be it. I don't want you to go out and buy more parkland, but I don't want to see the land that's currently owned by the city that is used for parkland, I don't want to see it disappear. And there's plenty of examples, Anchorage, with over 1 million acres in one city.
Well, that's one of the things I'm driving at is it's not the number of parks you have, it's the percentage of the land mass that is used for parks. You see what I'm saying?
Density of the...
I understand, but how is that point relevant to the community?
Well,
I agree with you and support exactly what you're saying. The biggest issue that you hear from the people, and that I hear from people when I'm talking to people about and it's so dodgy, Brian. I always like listen to you talk. You're inspiring when you speak.
Well, see, one of the issues I'll see is differentiating from the neighborhood parks that are required for the developers when they put their developments in versus the major parks like Riverside. And Rob, you're talking about green space at what, 212? Does that include the dog park? Is that considered green space now?
That was all part of it. When this was all done from 67.
Yeah, I know. That was part of McWilliams. And it was green space then, open space. I wouldn't consider that open space now.
The dog park?
Yeah, because it's not, the utilization of that is limited primarily to dog usage. It's not people going in and using it as open green space. To do whatever they want.
Dog owners use it as green space.
Yeah,
they sure
it's
do.
absolutely green space. It's probably one of our prettier ones at this point.
Yeah, and they've done an excellent job,
They
not
absolutely
taxpayer expense.
It's a wonderful example of some of that private partnership that we should be trying to look
We need
for.
to be careful, but you're right.
I agree. I think one of the falling shorts that we've seen happening in some of those beginning encounters where we may have had something was a lack of planning on how to present it to the people. And it simply came across as taking versus maybe an actual public-private partnership. It is a perfect example. Beautification-wise, maintenance-wise, it's constantly being upgraded. They're putting in mature trees. It's a wonderful, if you're not scared of dogs, it's a great place to go for a walk. The city is graciously provided to continued river access, which we're, as dog owners, glad you can still go through the gate and get to the river. So the question that I'm asking for you to answer directly is, you're, as a citizen, standing here and saying that you would like us as a recreation to make a formal demand that finances from the sale of this electric go immediately to a plan that would fortify and either garner support, because I can certainly see some organizations getting involved if they have a city partnership. Hey, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. Let's find some other people who will cross the T's and dot the I's and really upgrade these places. Having been to a couple of larger cities that really respect their green space, and my brother happens to sit on a recreation board in Alaska, it's a priority of the people. His room is filled. They're in the seats.
Yeah.
They care about how they play. I don't understand why people don't care about our play space. But the fact is that they don't. And it's a really hard sell, as we can see, to get council members to actively support it. So if your suggestion is that we put up a fight for a portion of these proceeds, then please, by all means, your constituents, people that follow you, whatever noise needs to get made to prioritize that, because the people that we hear from are groups. It's a pickleball group, it's a dog park group, it's a skate park group, it's these little organizations that just can't seem to catch the attention of the city, of our council members. I'm not sure what the secret is, but if you've got some input on ways to demand a portion of those proceeds, because our spaces are important, and we can get them taken care of and into the 20th century, the 21st century, because they're gross.
Well, I think that if I had the magic bullet, I would have used it a long time ago, and I think that I know at least one gentleman here, at least one city employee can tell you that I've been advocating for more money for parks and for city employees for as long as I've been around this city. So that's 30 years. And
Will you be back here at 6 o'clock?
Pardon?
Will you be back here at 6 o'clock?
I will.
Okay.
I will. But, you know, you have two people in chambers here that aren't up on the dais. You have two people, and how do you generate interest in things that are important?
No, one of them were here, and I asked her to be here, and I got her here at the wrong time. Then she's got to come back at 6.
Maybe pizza.
There might be pizza.
And I would guess, I don't have a crystal ball, but I would guess that at 6 o'clock, you're probably going to have more than just me at a public podium. And I would guess, and again, I don't have a crystal ball, but I would guess that the majority of the people that come to this meeting are going to be in favor of the parks, because that's what motivates them. The people that aren't in favor of the parks aren't going to get up off their duff and come say a lot unless they belong to a special group that have a special interest in gaining access to the public treasury or public lands. And there's lots of them.
And that's not always, it's a rare person, I will agree, but it's not always the case. Because I would be one of those people from time to time. Because if we can't take care of it, give it to someone who will. So we can go play on it, do something with it, turn it into something. I mean, that's, instead of it just sitting there with no trespassing signs on it or whatnot.
The golf course, when I was on city council, the golf course, I found a golf course developer, that was willing to come in and turn that back into a golf course. It was going to be a par 3 golf course, and they were going to spend the money, and the only thing that they were asking is that the city lease the land to them for $1 a year, and that the city tell them what percentage they want of the take. And they were willing to give the city whatever percentage you want. And, you know, they'll make their cost for 9 holes, depending on what the city was going to
What happened?
There were backroom deals going on at the time to sell that property to a developer, and that was going to monetize the land and get ad valorem tax, and you know, it's the same playbook that we watched just recently.
But even that's not happening. Like, we can't do anything. So if you're sitting in these rooms over and over and over again, it seems like our city is in a constant state of stalemate. We don't do anything.
Right.
We don't move backwards, and we don't move forwards.
I would agree with you. I would agree with you. And you know, and to stay with the golf course for a minute, you know, take down the no parking signs.
They're gone.
Are they gone? Okay. Dynamite, thank you.
Not for long now. There's a motorcycle guy who's driving on them all the time and enjoying it, and so I'm sure it'll be just a matter of time before they go back up.
Yeah, well, you know, I mean, I can see lots of passive uses for that property if the governing authorities stay far enough away. And, you know, and somebody riding a motorcycle doesn't bother my time any. You know, somebody flying a drone, you know, perfect. Well, it's a little close to the airport, but, you know.
Yeah, after a certain place, they just drop out of the sky.
Yeah, a drone, because of the airport, might be a problem on that particular property, but I know that, because we go watch sunsets often, and I know that people fly drones down at Riverside and that whole area. You can go down there and you can often see somebody flying a drone, and, you know, I think it's wonderful, but I can also tell you that there's a fair number of people that, oh, well, it's so dangerous. What if it comes down and hits you? Well, you know what?
You're dead.
I mean, I'm in my 70s, and I've listened to what-ifs for a lot of years, and I'm still here. Nobody's killed me yet. Not that they haven't threatened, but
You still have your head.
Okay.
mostly.
You know, Brian, back to your story, though, about wanting to rejuvenate the golf course. Part of the problem is our system of government here. You've got somebody new coming on the city council every single year, and it shifts the balance of power, and what you thought was a plan suddenly is not even going to be funded. You know, you've budgeted, you've put it in the budget so that we can make these improvements, and the new balance of power says, nope, not going to spend that money on that. You know, and it's very, very frustrating, especially for those of us who have been fighting the good fight, trying to, you know, make improvements and trying to keep our head above water and trying to keep down the liability because the infrastructure is crumbling around us. But if you don't have the city council behind you, you have nothing. And there's no point in spending a bunch of money developing a nice master plan if they don't fund it and if it doesn't stay funded. And the problem is staying funded.
And I would agree, and master plans are difficult. By definition, master plans are more difficult than doing individual plans like the dog park, where we've had the opportunity and we've seen the opportunity for groups to increase the value of the use of city parks. But, you know, even if we pick one thing at a time, get rid of the stop signs. Thank you very much. I didn't know you had accomplished that. Dynamite, thumbs up to you. But I think that we're probably more successful in picking individual things, and with the city money, I mean, there's a couple of very individual, very identifiable things. You know, pay off the golf course so you stop complaining about how much it costs us every year. Pay off the marina, you know, and do the work necessary on the marina. Marina makes us money, and we really need to stop getting rid of, and this is not your problem, but we need to stop getting rid of all of our income producers. And this current city council has been very good at getting rid of our income producers. You know, when they sold the post office, the developer that bought it stood here at the podium and said, by the way, kids, don't do this. This is not a good idea. And I'm going to be here and I'm going to buy it if you want to sell it, if you want to do that. You know, at the price you're claiming that you want, I'll do that. I'm here to buy it. But I'm telling you, it's not a good idea. You've got a good moneymaker there with a pretty good client. U.S. Post Office is, you know, fairly good. And I don't know whether you remember the details, but down on the corner of 17th Street, that was the old postal annex. And after the 2004 hurricanes came in and blasted them, the current city manager had a brilliant idea of turning that into a commercial development and brought a West Palm Beach developer up and to develop that whole land, and we wound up paying $850,000 to the U.S. Post Office because we were supposed to, you know, in the terms of our contract, we were supposed to fix it and replace it, and we didn't. And we paid, whatever, $1 million worth of lawyers' fees and then another $850,000 in fine to the post office. And anyway, unfortunately for me, I have too good a memory, and I've paid too much attention to what's gone on over the community. So some of these things, I mean, I would agree with you. New council comes in and cuts the budget for what another council worked 2 years to get.
Yeah, every 2 years.
And then gone.
Yep.
And hopefully in this upcoming election, we're going to have somebody, I know there's at least one name on there. I know there's actually 3 names on the ballot that would advocate for a an increase in our parks in terms of availability and funds available to do things. And you know who they are, Hillman, Young, and Henry, are three advocates for our city parks. And, maybe this election will put those three on and we can get something done. But you don't have 2 years, you have 1 year. Because then the council changes again.
Which brings up an interesting point, and commission members, I think it'd be beneficial to have a conversation between us real quickly, but especially before we listen to the public come in, that he made a valid point that, there's an opportunity with some, let's just say city council gave the recreation department some money. There's a couple of different approaches that Rob could take with that money, and it could be a universal patching and kind of addressing some things all over the place, or potentially taking one project, maybe two, and really nailing them and winning a little bit of attention, winning a little bit of, I don't want to use the word trust, I'm not sure what the word that I want to seek is, but a little inspiration from the community of, oh wow, look at this thing they just did and did well that feels like the year 2020, or 21, because that'd be when it would be done, maybe. If we listened tonight for something that we could get on board with and think about, okay, we could go with the universal bandage approach and just try and heal some things, or we can go out and identify a project and kick ass at it, but kick butt at it, really do a good job. Maybe we listen tonight for something like that can become a banner project.
I'm confused about the golf course property. Did Jim O'Connor make a deal that says that they get to use it for parking?
That was not Jim O'Connor. The project I was talking about was a different city manager.
No, I know. I'm talking about right now. Right now.
Right now, there's just a shared use for parking when it comes to
For that
events.
golf
That's it.
course property?
So far, that's it.
So if we wanted to turn it into, say, a track where people could run and people could, multi-use sort of track and field thing.
That's all.
It would all.
I would think that would be something that maybe folks want to come forward and talk about at 6 o'clock.
And it's.
Yeah, but aren't they, they're renegotiating?
That's
They
my
are.
point.
I mean, my thing is, look, there's a couple things that are, okay. And I will say this when I do my piece. First of all, I see this as two pieces when it comes to this master plan idea. One is a master plan that the city council is looking at from our department. And that one really is more about what we do now, what we're doing with our current facilities, what we're doing with our programs, what we're doing with in the future, and the parks, et cetera, of what we have right now. And then there's the second piece. The second piece is the one that I think that Brian, Ruth Stanbridge, Amelie Loy, all those folks have come forward and said, before we do anything moving forward, we need to have a master plan on what we're going to do with all of our properties, whatever they may be. Now, I might be wrong in my assessment, but I see this as two pieces. And one is driven, to me, one for us is being driven by the council for us to do what we're doing from our department. And the second one is more of a, I think the idea of the 6 o'clock meeting was for folks to come and give input on everything. Anything and everything that they would like to see in a master plan. Am I wrong?
Parks and Recreation.
Parks and Recreation, yes.
Only.
Right. Nothing else. Parks and Recreation only. But again, I will say this, when we've been, if you've been able to watch some of the council meetings in the last, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 months, you've had Amelie Loy, you've had Brian, you've had Ruth Stanbridge, you've had a number of people from the public come forward and say, before we move forward on Parks and Recreation stuff, let's develop a master plan. And I know that's what Dick's idea was of having this meeting tonight, right? Am I wrong in my assessment?
Yes. I would argue that I would rather see. It's fine that you've got a master plan as the grand idea. That's fine, but My interest is more immediate projects that we know we can do. We know that there's enough money in the treasury right now to pay off all of the debt on all of our parks. And that's something that can be done immediately without a master plan. You don't need a master plan to pay off the debt. You don't need a master plan to say, Young Park, every one of the roofs on those pavilions over there, every one of them is in terrible shape. If it was your house, it'd be condemned. They'd kick you out. Now think about that. If it was your house, they'd kick you out. It'd be condemned. That's the condition of the roofs there. And I don't know what it would take, $100,000? I don't know. But it would take a lot of money to replace those roofs. But Young Park is incredible. It's gorgeous. It's wonderful. And let's not let it deteriorate more. The restroom facilities over at Humiston. Oh my gosh. There's holes in the roof.
Actually, I need to move on with this meeting.
Well, master plan is fine, but individual projects that we can see and we can name and we can put price tags on and we can do them immediately, that would be my preference.
The one thing I was going to say regarding all of what Brian just mentioned too, when it comes to pavilions, et cetera, just as enough for your information, I brought this forward before. Right now, Stephanie put together a nice little plan for naming rights, and it's being explored and studied by both the finance director and the planning director. And we'll be coming back forward once we get their input to have naming rights happen, and we're going to be looking at facilities to have naming rights, all our pavilions, covered pavilions, to see if we can get sponsors and people. We get a number of people who sponsor trees, we get a number of people who sponsor benches. Why not pavilions? Have a pavilion named after someone, and that's one of the things that we're exploring.
It's a good idea.
In addition, one of the things we were looking for, believe it or not, were even bathroom roofs. And my reasoning would be more of if we could get a company or somebody who actually, that's their business, if we can get them to put it on there. And I realize, I'm not saying, you're going to put some, you would go with specific plaques and things that would be, driven. And I'm not saying that that's how we should, but I think it's another avenue we're looking to help make it a public-private thing where
It's a solution if you're not going to get any money from the city to getting it done.
It's a solution to help out both, where we can get, and that might get, hopefully we get more stuff. That's one of the ideas that we have moving forward right now.
It's a good one.
We'll see how it all makes it out and breaks
Rob,
out.
that could also be done in concert with, you could fix the pavilions at Young
Yes.
Park
Yes.
and then advertise
Yes.
for sponsors
Yes.
and then put their name on it.
Yep.
You don't have to wait for a sponsor to
Correct.
undertake the work that needs to be done
Right.
to protect our investments.
Correct.
Okay, I got a time limit on this meeting. All right, recreation director's matters.
I'll let Patty talk about the Christmas drama and gymnastics registration and the mother-daughter tea party.
Christmas drama was great. I think we had record crowds, lots of talented kids, amazing performances, and great thing for this community.
And thanks for those who came out.
Yes,
on
thank
this
you. Registration for the next session is the 19th, 8 a.m., Leisure Square. We expect a big crowd again because they will perform in the Firefighters Fair. All of the participants
Are you looking for
march.
400
What, participants? and
registrants?
Gymnastics participants?
Probably, I'd say 250.
50.
When have we ever had 400? Where did I get that number?
I believe
Summer
when-
camp.
Maybe
with
when we were
camp
with the
and shared.
county.
Camp and shared maybe
Yeah.
for a circus or something, because you'd have the circus and you'd have the county and you had the performing
and-
groups,
yeah.
all of them.
I just remember that number from somewhere.
Yeah,
A while
that's
ago.
From a while ago.
Okay, mother's and daughter tea.
And that'll be the January 26th. I believe we're already almost full for that one, so come on out. It'll be fun.
And to let you all know that we did increase fees with a number of our programs and things started in January, so.
Yeah, what's the feedback?
And the pavilions.
Yeah, the covered pavilions. We're getting some. We'll just have to give it, let's face it, people have to, we'll see how everybody adapts. And we'll see how the numbers reflect when we get to the bottom line.
Are you getting any feedback?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
The pavilion thing's not doing so hot, though.
Oh, yeah, we're getting feedback from that.
Yeah.
And we're getting some from our tennis rates. Remember how high we raised the tennis rates?
But we also remember the comparative.
We did.
Where their options are,
did.
and it is exponential.
Well, and we have, again, our explanation is we've been asked to try and pay for ourselves. So that's our biggest thing. And at this point in time, it hasn't been too bad. We're actually starting to take some reservations for the pavilions. And tennis so far, I've only had a few. And I'm not sure if they have.
So has it affected?
So I think right now we're plugging along. We're still.
Has it affected the utilization primarily at tennis?
Not yet. We won't know that. Remember, they just started, so we won't know that for, I'm going to say, 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
But the season will be over in 4 months.
We're going to get the whole feel.
The whole season.
The whole season.
Yeah.
To your point about paying for ourselves, I think I told you earlier, the national average for cost recovery on Parks and Rec is 17%.
Yeah.
There's no way. You shouldn't even be expected to pay for yourself. It's like trying to make a profit off your children.
Well, again, I think a lot of it is you try to generate, you want to create a balance. And the idea is, to me, is to create a balance. You want to come up with, like Brooke said, new ideas, new programs, new things that may get people excited, and then they come and spend. The other thing you want to try and do is you want to try and keep up with fees. Let's face it, the cost of living adjustment goes anywhere from 1% to 3% a year. So you got to kind of think of that. And then the other thing is, of course, you got to think of new ideas and try to be creative without getting people to where they lose the sight, where you lose sight of, and this is something that Patty and everybody always reminds me of, that we don't want to lose sight of what brings people to this community. Mm-hmm. What gets people excited? Why do people live here? And those are the balances and the things that we have to weigh out, because we don't want to lose the people. Because let's face it, one day we may come back and go, oh my gosh, we just went from 11 to 17% increase in tourism to a negative 11 or 17% in tourism. Why? What happened? So I think there's a number of variables and things that come with that. But the other thing, I'm sorry, the one other thing I want to explain, and I say this over and over till I'm blue in the face and until I retire. People look for recreation. People who are participating in recreation, a number of them are people who cannot otherwise afford the recreation. And that cannot be forgotten. We know that more than 50% of the kids who are in this community, this county, are on free reduced lunch. Let's not forget that. And that, to me, is something that can't be overlooked. We try to get our help from scholarships, and thank you for all those who help us. However, there is a void, and people need their recreation. They need it for their health. We have a number of people who live on a set budget that are retired. We have a number of people who have children who want to participate in programs, but they couldn't afford it if they went to clubs and things like that. We get all that. And the idea is we try to strike a balance. That's the most important thing. If we can pay for ourselves, great. Go ahead, Sue. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, crowding is part of the problem, and the county is going crazy right now. There's a new development on every corner between here and 95, and all of those people come to Vero Beach to recreate. They're not doing it out there, they're doing it in here. And we've got to be able to deal with that. We've got to be able to bring ourselves up to a better standard and to improve on what we offer.
There's a balance again. The most important thing, like you are right. I mean, let's face it, people are going to go, if they want to go to the ocean, they're going to go west-east. They're not going to go west to southeast or northeast. They're going to go west-east. If people are going to want to go play in a playground that's a quarter of a mile or a mile away and they're just outside the city limits, they're not going to go to a park that's 4 miles away. They're going to go to the park that's a quarter of a mile away and it's in the city limits. I mean, it's just, and of course there's really nice amenities in the city. Not to say there aren't in the county, but I'm just saying that there's, again, a nice balance here. And the thing that I think also gets overlooked is that tourism, county residents, etc., yes, they're going to utilize those different spaces, but where do they go after they utilize those spaces? If they go play pickleball, let's talk pickleball. If you go play pickleball downtown, or if you go play pickleball even at the IG Center, what are you going to do afterwards? There's a chance you're probably going to go with your group and go to a restaurant, go buy something locally, and you're going to buy something there. And that goes for, okay, a number of people who go visit a beach. When they go to visit a beach, what are they going to do? They're going to go to the beach, and sometimes, guess what? They're going to eat lunch there, breakfast, dinner, whatever, stop somewhere, go to the shops, everything else. It's just going to happen. So, I mean, there's an economic impact by people utilizing, even if they're a county resident or a tourist. That's all I'm trying to say.
There's a problem which we've been fighting for years, which is funding for this expansion of people utilizing city facilities. And as you're saying, I think
it's a balance.
The percentage of people is growing, not city residents.
15.8 and staying there.
We've had this continual fight trying to get basically sales tax money.
Right. I understand. You have that. And again, that's got to be a balance. I still look at it as a balance. Everything should be a balance. There should be a balancing.
Well, ideally, yes, but realistically, it hasn't happened. So that keeps putting the city residents further behind, on the need to fund. And, what Brian has talked about and everybody recognizes is the deterioration in the condition of facilities, infrastructure. And somewhere that's going to have to be reckoned with. I mean, you can only go so far and so many potholes before, it comes to reality. But that's not going to be resolved in this meeting tonight. Let me move on. Chairman's matters, it's been a broad discussion. As you can see, I think this is going to be an active meeting tonight. And I'm glad we had this. To me, this is a preliminary meeting on what to expect and, how to approach it. That's why I gave you the idea of how I want to conduct that meeting. Members' matters, start down here.
I'm not sure if you're aware of the 2 walkthroughs that I did at Leisure Square this past month. One with a individual that was interested in potentially funding a project there.
Okay.
And another one.
Oh.
Yeah, another one. And then another individual who was interested in approaching somebody about funding the project. And in the walkthrough, I got the feedback I was kind of nervous about getting, and that I just wanted to come back to you and say again how important I think out of, especially listening to you advocate so much for individuals that cannot afford to do these types of activities, gymnastics and whatnot. We've got to do something about it. I feel like I felt like we had 2 people that were really interested in something and realized, oh, I can't take this on by myself, because leisure squares in such kind of shabby shape. And I felt it come off. I felt the excitement just kind of dip and go, oh yeah, this is a bigger bear than I'm willing to get involved in. And we were talking to the tune of a couple $1 million is what we're continually trying to strive for. I'm exhausted with trying to get someone to pay attention to that facility. It's exhausting. My empathy's really starting to kick in for you guys. But it's a shame to watch money walk in with the willingness to be involved and to do something, and to go, oh, wait a second, I'm not going to be the only person that believes that this place is worth investing in. So I don't know what the strategic plan is for the master plan, what the citizens come back in, but there's got to be a way. There's got to be a way to get some attention and get that place up to par.
Right. Okay.
Well, Brooke, we have the same problem at the community center, and I've talked to him about it several times. I mean, the city needs to put money into that facility. It's used all the time. It's rented constantly, yet no money is pouring into it. The blinds are all broken, the floors are in terrible shape, and I worked there for 20 years, and I'm still getting calls from people who say, can't you do something about the community center?
Okay, so let me just go into both of those sites. There is some money allocated to start getting some of the repairs done. You probably saw like the awning was put up, and then you had the bathroom, the one set of bathrooms, and we're working on the next. But the funding is not something, again, I look at it and I know exactly where you're both coming from. It would be really nice if we could just say, if we could have this amount of money, and I think this is what Brian's alluding to too, and you guys are both saying the same thing. If we could have that big lump sum where we could just go in and do all of the work, because right now each one is a piece. We have so much money per year that we can use.
And it's not outlasting the next thing that's degrading.
No.
So you never actually feel like you're making anything better.
It's really, it's a tough situation right now, because the truth of the matter is you have a number of different departments that are really pretty much battling for the 1 cent sales tax, and those include the police department, public works and the roads and the sidewalks, everything else. So the amount that we have each year is...
Yeah, I know.
It's interesting. We are trying to move forward, but it's one of those things where you're constantly in the mud. You just got to keep battling, hope we find that one angel that will come, like we did with, the Hummiston Playground or the baseball field over at Michael Field.
Right.
We need the one angel who might be willing to come in and say, okay, we're going to help you with that $1 million.
Now we got an issue over there.
Huh?
Now we have an issue over there.
Which one?
Michael's Field. Go ahead.
I'm finished.
Okay. Greg.
The things that we have even talked about are right on the water, the old power plant. That's still sitting there. What is to be done with that recreation-wise? We've been talking about that for how many months?
One of the things that, and I'm glad you brought that up, one of the things that will be brought, all right, a couple things, is the planning department along with the city council are putting together a request for proposal for the three pieces, three corners. And I know that a number of people are going to come talk about that tonight. The good news is they're going to be able to talk about it tonight, which I think is something that's good, but they're also going to be able to talk about it again when that request for proposal comes back in, and I think they're going to have it in February. And I know Jason, the planning director, I believe, will be here to talk a little bit more about that at 6 o'clock.
I mentioned those pieces, and we still have, it's a beautiful piece of property, Charles Park.
It's all right. Yeah,
It's still right there.
Yeah, Brian, wait till tonight, the discussion tonight, because I know what you're going to say. Anyway, really, nothing can be actually done on that property until it is pulled out of the city charter as being dedicated for recreation purposes. So that's the first thing that's going to have to be done to release that property, right? So until that's accomplished, it's still tied up, you know, per se, and there's nothing to say that the residents are going to release it. It's just certain people's opinions, you know, on where it's going to go. But initially, it has to be released, you know, before you can really get too deep into developing it, you know, legally. Okay? Right, Stephanie?
I think, are you referring to the wastewater treatment plant and the power plant properties?
In the post office, all 3 parcels.
Yeah,
That,
yeah, in the old post office, that's correct. I didn't mention
It's 37
That's not
acres.
part of your 3, that's not your 3 corners.
I'm
Your 3
talking,
corners are your power plant and the other ones.
Sewer plant.
that property, and I'm
The old post office.
speaking of very high range at 30,000 feet here, that property was conveyed to us by the state, and there are deed restrictions on the property, which show up in an ownership and encumbrance report that, right, Rob probably doesn't even know about. So, yeah, you're going to come up with some ideas tonight and make recommendations to the city council. However, there are limitations on the use of that property.
Yeah, I would say the post office is not.
No, I don't
should not
believe
be
so.
privy to- I think that's almost like what you were saying about the marina, Dick. I think that's a separate issue. That's more of a council,
Yeah,
not a reclamation thing.
Right.
That's,
But the other 2 are still under, I think, that referendum, which was passed.
Are you referring to the charter protected
Correct.
properties?
Yeah.
Now, are you referring to a lease of the charter properties? Is that what we're talking about, or?
Well, my understanding is that referendum was that the property would have to be used for recreation purposes.
I see what you're saying.
Okay. So once you are getting into this discussion, which will, as you're alluding to, probably be presented tonight on the commercialization of that property, then you're moving, or you can be moving beyond the definition of recreation. And we've had this discussion many times, primarily with Jim O'Connor, on what would be permissible and what wouldn't as recreation.
And the charter's not your only restrictions. There are deed restrictions from the original conveyance of the property.
Okay, you want to expand on that?
No.
Okay.
Because it's so high level, and I don't have the deed in front of me, I can't give you a full...
Well, unfortunately, I think it's going to come up later.
Well, and that's fine, it can come up in a discussion. I think your idea tonight is to have public input on a master plan for Parks and Recreation.
Yeah, but that's
right?
that's going to come. It's almost guaranteed. So that will come back to you. Okay, just, you know, as a, be prepared type thing. All right. Greg, I think that's where I am. Do you have anything you want to put in here?
I think he did already.
You did?
Yeah.
Judy?
About the skateboard, we haven't brought that up in quite a while.
the skate park?
Yeah.
Right now, it's still possibility. I know that there's still enthusiasm for it, and we're just hoping that, much like what Brooke had brought forward, that maybe, hopefully, someone will come forward.
There's enthusiasm, but no money.
Well, yeah, right. There's still,
What a
I know
common
it's...
thread.
It's, right.
Yeah. Exactly.
But I think there's limits also on the time that property...
There may be limits. I just think that it's still, if someone comes forward, and I think that I still think that there'll be an appetite for it. How's that? The other thing I want to say too is that I want to kind of reiterate something Bobby said. That's kind of important to remember too as well. Community Center and what Brooke said. The Community Center and Leisure Square and Center Stage, they may not look the best, but they're being heavily utilized.
Oh, I know that.
And I don't want that to get lost at all. I want, I'm really hoping that we can get the angel that will come in and do the public-private thing, who will be willing to share with us to do, so that we can continue doing what we're doing, but also do what they do so well. when it comes to new programming and things like that, all we've been doing is they're now renters and they're now partners. So that's,
You also have a good teamwork. You have those lifeguards helping you when they could not, the Red Sea, Red Tide.
well, right, yeah, my thing is again, you have a number of people out there who truly care about recreation, and they're going above and beyond to try and help out. And that's everything from your lifeguard association to...
Spouses.
Well, of course, family members to volunteers who, we have a program, the Accidentals, who come every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, and they do the whole event. I mean, we have a number of people who truly care, and we want to keep doing what we're doing. We would love to get our facilities back.
Okay, Sue?
Well, I'm encouraged that Brooke is bringing people around to do
Yep.
facility considerations. What I've been doing is working on funding children's participation as opposed to putting Band-Aids on things. And I think about, I've been on this commission now for 7 years, and I think about what's happened in the city recreation-wise since I've been on the commission. And every single one I can think of has been privately funded, except the redesign of Hummiston Park, which was a city thing, to upgrade. Not without issues. But the dog park was privately inspired. All the playground improvements that have happened around town.
Yes.
The Cal Ripken, Jake Owen baseball thing, it's all been
Murals?
ground.
Get your mural.
The murals too.
Thomaston was private.
Yes.
Also.
Well, I know what Sue's talking about. She's talking about the redevelopment of Hummiston, but not the playground. The playground, again, was
Yeah,
also...
I'm talking about the promenade. I'm talking about the...
Okay.
Yeah.
But the whole redevelopment was...
Oh, yeah, no,
Right.
that fell under the new playgrounds thing I said.
From the
Buggy Bunch.
owners of the building across by, Quail Valley, was it Quail Valley?
Yes.
Quail Valley. Yeah, Steve.
Anyway, but my point is, it's been ground level, concerned citizen groups that have made all of the improvements. And yeah, it's great if you've, but how many of those groups are there out there? They're all working to improve the thing they care about. The pickleballers, are constantly wanting bigger and better and lights and, resurface and, everybody has their personal concern, but nobody at the city level is looking top down and saying, how do we protect all of this? I mean, they've just been letting it degenerate for years, and it's very disturbing, and I want very much for what happens at 6 o'clock to be productive, but it's only meaningful if the city backs you up and funds it, and that's my concern.
That's always our concern, and the thing is that this past year, you mentioned the kids and everything, we had 50 people, 50 families asked for assistance.
50 scholarships.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Rob, do you still take the city council through the facilities like we used to periodically?
I haven't taken the city council. Some do periodically will want to go and take a tour around the facilities. I do also try to get them in the yearly report of what's going on and what we're all about.
I mean, I think if they could go and maybe look at the facilities and see the people using them and see what is wrong, maybe.
They've all seen them. There's, they've all seen
They have
them.
their opinions.
Yeah, there's not a single one that hasn't, they all know what it looks like.
Pretty much.
But it's just gonna change. Because every couple of years, it's...
Greg's not wrong.
You got
Seems like they would
another group.
be embarrassed.
You're right about that. But
It's only money.
we have an election in February, so yeah, I think it's a good idea to do it anyways, Bobby. And Brooke, I agree with you. They all have, but we definitely need to take them around, and they definitely need to get that report as well.
Okay, any other
No, I don't have anything
at
else.
this point for this meeting? Then I think we will adjourn this meeting and come back at 6 o'clock for the public meeting. How's that?
Sounds good.
Okay, we're adjourned.